Hello everyone and welcome back to another Strategoi video. Ryan here, kicking off a new hopefully era of I guess Strategoi content, but also inspiration in Age of Sigmar. Anyone that's been following knows that the last video I posted was my kind of lamenting where fourth edition had kind of left us in terms of especially Johnny type playing, list building, and so forth. And that led to me being on Warhammer Weekly with my buddy Tom Meeges from the Dutch scene here, but also from the AOS World scene, both in Atlanta and World's teams, which I just got back from, actually. And I don't know. I think just the vibe of the event and the lead up to it and working with people to play in a team and playing some really clean, techie, fun games of Warhammer just led to me being kind of reinvigorated. Now, obviously, the rules haven't changed in the meantime, not really. But we do have a new GHB underway, which is, of course, the subject of today's video, um, and all the content that's coming out before it, of course. And plus, just something about the team's format is so, for lack of a better term, magical. Like, Warhammer to me has always been about playing the game with people, emphasis on human beings, the people, individuals who are thinking and interacting with you, and that you get to meet and have drinks with or whatever, spend some quality time with before and after the game, and build new relationships. And Worlds just reminded me not only with just being there at the event, but of course with my team. I played with Team Slovenia this year as a mercenary, and those guys are just so amazing. And I was friends with them already, so it wasn't like I was just being a hired gun or whatever. And getting to have some leadership potential or a role to play in the group with showing them about pairing stuff and talking more about the different armies out there and stuff. Not that I've got everything down pat, but um, really felt nice. It kind of let me scratch a number of itches that of kind of things I'm good at in the game. I'm not the best player, I know, but I do think I have a decent sense of kind of oversight of the game and just being able to see the big picture stuff. And obviously, that's why I'm switching more to commentary on the threshold side of things too. Like at our tournaments coming up, I don't know if anyone caught it, but we just streamed at our first annual Gauntlet tournament, a 2-day tournament. I was doing streaming instead of playing, and I loved it so much that I'm going to be switching over to doing that at our Threshold Invitational tournaments that are local here to the Netherlands, and then also our big teams tournament and other big tournaments that come up. Because it was just so great to be able to apply my passion for the game in a place where it's not necessarily about me performing, it's just me getting to share my thoughts on and takes on what's going on in the moment and talk about it. I love talking about this game as well. I'm going to still be going to tournaments. I had a blast playing for Team Slovenia at Worlds, but I'll cover lots more detail about that. I've got a number of interviews planned and hopefully even more to come. And can't wait to tell you guys all about it and all the prep and everything leading up to it. But anyway, long story short, I'm basically pumped, and I just got back from Ljubljana. I flew in before and after. Instead of going directly to Austria, I drove in with a couple of the team members, including the captain Timon, and stayed at his house and just had a great time visiting Ljubljana. And then I landed and saw this article and said, you know what? We used to do Strategoi faction focuses about this time a year ago daily, where each of the armies was getting a 4th edition preview of a few war scrolls and battle traits and stuff. And this is kind of similar, and it'll be easy to make some content real quick, wham bam, and just share my thoughts of what it means. So I would love to hear you guys, your feedback in the comments. I'm not going to necessarily think of every single possible combination, but I think I could do a decent job here, and this will be a fun way to look at these together. So anyway, before I move on, just don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe, all the good YouTube stuff. And thank you to everyone, by the way, at Worlds that reached out to say they're a fan of either this channel or my work with Threshold. So thank you so much. It meant the world to me, and I had a blast meeting everyone. Okay, so if you don't know what's going on, we've got the GHB coming up, right? We get a new GHB generally once a year, every summer. And GW said, we're going to lead into this kind of like with the faction focuses, by expanding each one of the factions each day until the GHB comes out, starting with Skaven, which is great because they started 4th edition with the first official battle tome, not just index. And they're the army that I took to Worlds and love passionately. They are probably the most 3rd edition feeling army to me in terms of techiness and list writing out of everything that we've got. Just for me, at least amongst my armies. So anyway, couldn't be happier to be talking about Skaven today. And I'll spoiler alert, I really like these rules. I've already read them. So the idea is kind of like also the Grotmas 40k expansions that happened leading up to Christmas instead of like Advent Calendar, whatever they were doing then, the rumor engine stuff, where they expanded each of the what is it called in 40k? Kind of like their battle formations, their sub factions. I forget what they're called out of the top of my head, but anyway, those and with a whole bunch of rules that came with them and stuff, which is pretty cool. In a similar way, we're kind of doing that here, but it's a little smaller scale. But I think you guys are still going to like what we've got. So if you look at the article, I haven't watched this video yet, but I have the feeling that it's just a lore video, but it could be more than that. And then that the lore kind of helps inspire what's going on in the story as we go into this Ghyran season, the Scourge of Ghyran. And then we start to talk a little bit about the stuff you're going to get when you download stuff. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you that, at least in the Skaven one, we've got 2 new formations, 1 new set of, I think, heroic traits, and then we've got 2 new Scourge of Ghyran seasonal rule alternates for units that already exist. Okay, so this might be a little confusing. So you'll see here that we've got Scourge of Ghyran, Greyseer on Screaming Bell. Of course, we already have a Greyseer on Screaming Bell. Now, you'll also notice that the unit size, of course, stays the same, the base size, and even the regiment options stay the same. And then we've got this kind of caveat here that says that it's only going to last for the next season, at least. But we also see there's a different points value, which is great because you don't have to go by well, okay, I'll get to that in a second. The points are different because it's a different war scroll and it's got different attributes. So they can customize these over time to make sure that it feels fair in the game, which is a great solution. Also, so that you don't have to go buy new models that you don't already have. If you already have a Greyseer on Screaming Bell, you can't mix and match the new version, the temporary version, with the official Battletome version, the non-Scourge of Ghyran version. So you don't have to do any modeling to show that it's different. You just have to put it on your list that it's the Scourge of Ghyran version, and you're not allowed to bring one of each or anything like that. You can't mix and match, which means your opponents aren't going to be confused. You just let them know ahead of time, this is my Scourge of Ghyran Greyseer, not to be confused with a regular Greyseer. So these are the rules. This is what's different. Of course, it means we all have to learn some new rules, but that's totally fine. And I actually think this rule set's really cool. We're also going to see it with the Brood Terror. But I want to talk about the Greyseer first. So I'm actually going to flip over to this document. This is what the document looks like, by the way. So we start with battle formations, some heroic traits, and then on the second page we get these new war scrolls. So let's take a look at what's different. I've got the other one pulled up next to me here. So as far as I'm aware, the wheels are exactly the same. With one small addition, we're seeing this 5+. I think this is also in the Soulblight book, so that's also good. But this 5+ is the ward, because even though they're leaving the ward down here at the bottom, it's also popped up here, which is nice, so that you can quickly see it in kind of the reference place where it would organically be. For those that haven't bought any of the War Scroll cards for the armies thus far that have come out in 4th edition, and I mean War Scroll cards, not the index cards, this was already in the cards. So it's not like they just added it. They just didn't make it onto the indexes for some reason. Okay. And they didn't make it into the Battle Tome version of it, only on the War Scroll version of it. So this is new for even the Battle Scroll version of it. Now, if we take a look, so let's say the melee weapons, I'm just going to quickly do a side-by-side and see if anything's different here while I'm talking about this. And to me, it doesn't seem like anything's changed. Although, actually, there's one thing. So the Crushing Bulk, this would be of, I guess, the whole apparatus itself. Maybe it's the Rat Ogre. But no, it can't be, because the Rat Ogre's got its own thing. It actually does charge damage now, which is kind of cool. +1 damage on the charge. So it goes from 6 attacks, 4s, 2s, -1, 2 to 6 attacks, 4s, 2s, -1, 3. And the Crushing Bulk, if we look at the next rule, the passive, the basically getting bracketed rule, once it gets 10 or more, the attacks still go down to 4, just as they always have. Okay. If we look down at the keywords, because the keywords are often kind of similarly, kind of over overarching for what we're looking for here. He's still Chaos Skaven and Master Clan, still a hero, war machine, 2-level wizard, and a 5+ ward, which is just again redundant for what's up here. But what's really changed is down here. So let's talk about what the bell currently does, the regular version of it. The only other 2 rules you've got on here, well, you got 3 rules. You've got a green passive that is green because it's defensive. This is on the regular War Scroll, by the way, where you're giving friendly Skaven infantry units a 6+ ward while they're holy than 6. Okay, so you're seeing that that's not on here. All right, we'll come back to that. You've also got a hero phase ability and a hero phase spell. So let's talk about the spell first, because clearly on this War Scroll we're also seeing a hero phase spell. Also casting value 6, but the original was pick a visible enemy unit, does not have fly, and is within 13 inches to be the target. If the casting roll exceeds the target's move characteristic, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the difference between the casting roll and its movement characteristic. I've never liked that spell because even on, like, say you get a normal 5-inch movement characteristic target, that's a pretty standard movement characteristic, the average roll on a spell is only a 7. So you're doing 2 mortal damage. And then there's so many interactions, it could kind of get worse, obviously, if you're rolling into, let's see, cavalry wouldn't usually work unless it's like a cavalry with 10, a movement characteristic of 10. But then of course, if you roll high enough to do any damage, it's only going to do like 1 or 2. So not a huge fan of this spell. I suppose it's best against orcs or dwarves that are moving 4. If you get real hot, you're doing 8 mortal damage, but I think that's just some very rare occurrence. That's something you're not going to expect to see very often. And then the not spell hero phase rule on the original Screaming Bell was the Peal of Doom, where you roll a die and apply the corresponding effect. If you roll 1, just like a lot of Skaven stuff, it does damage to the Screaming Bell itself. If you rolled a 2 to 4, so your kind of middle value, and its most likely value, 50% of the time, until the start of your next turn, subtract 1 from hit rolls for combat attacks made by enemy units while the enemy unit itself is within 13 inches of this unit, which is really nice for protecting your whole castle. And of course, remember the original version of the War Scroll also had 6+ ward for Skaven infantry units that are wholly within 6. So that's interesting. And then if you rolled a 5 or 6 on that ability, then you'd roll a d3 for each enemy unit within 13, and on a 2+, it does that much mortal damage. A little boring. I know a lot of people would have rather the 2 to 4 just be the main thing, or that if you roll high enough, you can pick whichever one you want, or maybe stack things. Or so anyway, it's kind of interesting that they chose the Screaming Bell to be replaced. The current points value for the Screaming Bell, if we go back to this one, the new one's 310, but the old one was 350, if I'm not mistaken. So it's gone down in price, at least for what we're getting here. So let's see why they think it went down. So first off, the bell tolls. So this is what the bell does on this version of it. If the current battle round number is odd, so 3 of the 5 battle rounds, 1, 3, and 5, of course, we're adding 2 to the move characteristic of friendly Skaven units while they're wholly within 13. Now think about what that means. That's kind of like the Field Sergeant rule that we got in the GHB that will be going into the new GH, because probably the Field Sergeant rule is falling off. So Skaven's going to kind of keep it, and it's for anything. It's not just for infantry. You don't have to like have an honor guard giving it out or one of those italics heroes. You're just going to get access to this. And technically, for wherever the overlap is between these units, if there is overlap, let's take a look at that. It's legal for match play fought in the okay, so no. We can't use these units yet because match play, the GHB hasn't come out yet. So this is just looking towards the future. So there won't be any overlap with those 2 rules, I don't expect. Anyway, adding 2 inch to movement for all friendly Skaven. It's not specifying what type, which means this thing's moving 8. Your Doom Flayers are moving 2d6 plus 5, which is very good for them because they can be a little unreliable. Your say Deceiver is moving 12. You've got some good tech that you could be doing if you're starting something in this. And remember, 3 claw steps ahead looks at your movement characteristics. So it would combine with 3 claw steps ahead to give +2. And if the Warp Seer keeps doing what he does, then I think that makes it another +2. So you'd be getting for 3 claw steps ahead plus 4 inches potentially, which is pretty strong. Of course, that's also true with the Field Sergeant rule as it currently works. So I like that. If the current battle round number is even, so only on turns 2 and 4, we're subtracting 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units. The target friendly Skaven unit was holier than 13. So this is kind of similar to the effect of the Peel of Doom ability that was happening 50% of the time. But that was only subtracting -1 to hit for the units while they are standing within 13, and only for combat attacks. So this one, I'm taking a look at both rules at the same time. Is hit rolls made by any amount, so it's any type of hit roll, so it's including shooting, but now it's not based off of where the opponent's standing, but where the Skaven unit is standing. So now, basically, you're extra protected against shooting and melee for all your stuff that stays wholly within a 13-inch of this unit. Honestly, personally, I think that's better than a 6+ ward, especially given that the 6+ ward was stuck within 6 inches. So I like this rule better, personally, and I think it's a lot techier. And the fact that you can control what the bell does is really nice. Let's skip over to the once per turn army end of any turn, the purple ability down below. Echoes of the Vermin Doom. You pick each friendly Skaven unit wholly within 13 of this unit to be the targets and heal D3. This is fantastic, considering a lot of Skaven abilities can blow things up or do mortal damage back at you, like Warp Lightning Cannons, the Warp Cog Convocation abilities that if you roll a 1 are going to hurt you, or those of the Molder clan. There's all kinds of ways that Skaven units can hurt themselves, and being able to heal them can be a big deal, especially like rattling guns. Going down to a couple wounds means if you need to rally one, now you, it was always the case that if you just rolled 3-4 ups, you'd be fine. But now you're just getting a healed up unit in addition. For your rat ogres or storm fiends, I can imagine this is really good. And considering this version of the Screaming Bell is moving faster on turns 1, 3, and 5, is still pretty nice. I like this a lot. It's also keeping your heroes alive, so very cool. And then lastly, the spell on a 6. Until the start of your next turn, this unit counts as a friendly Gnawhole for the purposes of the Gnawhole Ambush, Tunnels Through Reality, and Endless Vermintide abilities. So I'm going to try to see if that leaves anything out. I think that's actually most of the rules involving the Gnawhole. Let's see, what did we get? So there's 2 places, if you don't know, where you're looking at Gnawhole rules. You're either looking at the Gnawhole itself or potentially the battle traits. On the Gnawhole itself, we had Volatile Ground, which is not mentioned here. That's just if a model passes over it. So no, it's not going to do damage on someone, but that's not really the main rule. Tunnels Through Reality is on the Gnawhole rule, and that's going to be the teleport rule, which means a unit could teleport from the Screaming Bell if the spell goes off to a Gnawhole, which is amazing. Because think, if your Gnawholes keep getting destroyed and you got one in the corner and then someone destroys the one you really need to teleport from, this is giving you a backup option, which is awesome. Let's see, what else did it say? Endless Vermintide is also on the Gnawhole. That's the first CP, bringing a replacement unit back. Amazing. And remember, that's outside of 3. So it could even be that your Screaming Bell, which is also relatively tanky, is in combat. And then on the back side of it, you let the units come in. Also remember, the base for a Screaming Bell is, though not exactly the same dimensions, at least on one dimension, longer than the Gnawhole. So it could be projecting a bubble of holier than 6 inches, or holier than 6 inches to be used as a Gnawhole quite a bit further. And then the last ability was Tunnels Through Reality. Gnawhole Ambush, sorry. Gnawhole Ambush, that's the one where if you set up some of your units in Deep Strike, you can let them come in through this, which is great because I often never use that ability, the Deep Strike from deployment, because it's too easy for your opponent to destroy your Gnawholes. But now that you've got this guy, and remember he's a hero, so he can teleport himself to another part of the board and then let something step out. I don't know why, I'll be honest, I don't know why this unit is cheaper. I think this is a huge upgrade for the Screaming Bell personally, and I'm actually really excited to play it, which makes me frustrated because I sold my one copy of it to my buddy Mathieu. But I hope he's going to really enjoy playing with it. I'll have to go get my own version of it soon. But anyway, I really like this upgrade. Let me know, guys, what you think. All right, let's go on to the Brood Terror. So if we look at the war scroll change here. We could think of this as kind of like the battle scroll or battle profiles update, I should say. Um, what we're seeing is that it's still one unit at 240 points. That's 20 points cheaper from what it currently is. Now, keep in mind, it could be that the new battle scroll changes the points for the normal version of the unit, the non temporary version. So that's something to keep in mind. And then you've got Molder. He's a monster. Yep, that's all the same. I'm pretty sure. And a 90 millimeter base. I think nothing's really changed there, which I wouldn't have expected anyway. Let's take a look at the War Scroll. So, I'm going to flip over to the Brood Terror. We're seeing that it's got a ward, which is new, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the original Brood Terror did not have a 5-up ward, so now the thing's staying alive a lot better, and it got 20 points cheaper. It's still got 12 health on a 6-up move, or 6-inch move, 5-up save, control 5. If we scroll down to the keywords here, monster plus ward, like we said, Chaos, Skaven, Molder, nothing different there. If we look at its output, so for its ranged output, I'm going to double check that this is all the same while I'm kind of talking here. Yeah, nothing changed with the range profile. And then the melee profile for the chain flail still has crit mortals. Yep, that's all the same. And then now interesting, they changed the name on the next one. The regular version is called just bladed limbs, and this is loosely attached bladed limbs. And they actually have +2 attacks. Yeah, I don't know what the story is with that, why being loosely attached makes it have 2 extra attacks, but otherwise the profile's the same. So I'll take it. Why not? All right. So the original version of the Brood Terror had a once per turn rampage, which it still does in any combat phase, and had an end of turn ability. Now the end of turn ability, Regenerating Terror, has not changed. That's just heal D6 this unit. Now, but the fact that it has a 5-up ward on top of its 5-up save makes this unit a lot more appealing to take, I think. Now, its old combat phase rampage was actually really strong. It said, roll a dice on a 2+ for the rest of the turn, not for until your following hero phase. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units while they are within 6 of this unit. That's what it used to do. And that was actually really nice. Of course, it's only the rest of the turn, so that would be the combat phase, basically. But, you know, he didn't even have to be vulnerable in combat. Now let's see what they changed it to. So it's still a rampage, and just like any rampage, it's once per turn army, any combat phase in this case. Declare, pick up to 4 other friendly non-Scryer Molder units wholly within 12 inch to be the targets. Now, why do they say non-Scryer Molder? We usually think of Molder as being things like the Master Molder, Hell Pivot, Abomination, Rat Ogres, and this guy. But there actually is a 5th option, and that's Storm Fiends, because Storm Fiends have both the Molder and Scryer keywords. So this is basically saying all things with Molder keywords except for Storm Fiends, and actually Lord Screech Vermin has both. So because he's also got Scryer, he doesn't qualify for this. So what happens here is you subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of this unit's loosely attached bladed limbs. So it's giving you 2 to play with and still go back down to what the normal Brood Terror was for the rest of the phase for each target picked. So if you pick 2 targets, he goes down to 3, just like the regular version. Add 1 to hit rolls for the target's attacks for the rest of the phase. This is actually pretty amazing because the Brood Terror, maybe he doesn't need to be really focusing on that profile anyway. If you look at his other profile here, this one, this is the main event, right? And the cool thing about this, and I'm just now noticing, maybe I never noticed this before, but this guy doesn't have any companion words on him, which is really nice because it would mean that he wouldn't get to use a lot of abilities. But the Hell Pit Abomination does have the companion keyword. I guess that's because the Brood Terror is like a mutated Master Molder or something. But anyway, this is really the main event here because it's got a much better to wound roll. So by sacrificing some of these, you could go down to 1 attack to give 4 other, it can't be him, +1 to hit. So he can't do it to himself. And that means you don't need to have multiple Brood Terrors to do this because, of course, you only have any combat phase. Now, it would be cool if you could take one of these Brood Terrors and then one of the regular ones, but that's implicitly not allowed or explicitly not allowed by the rules. They said you can only choose one or the other. So anyway, you're not mixing and matching in that sense, but that's fine. So think about the things that you'd be targeting here. You're basically targeting the Hell Pit Abomination, but unfortunately, the way it's currently worded, because the Hell Pit Abomination has the companion keyword, it currently can't use this ability. because it would try to give it to it, and then the companion keyword would stop it from actually being able to get the +1 to hit. So they're gonna have to FAQ that if that was the intention. So it's basically just going on the Master Molder and then the Rat Ogres. But of course, on the Rat Ogres, that's pretty cool because the Rat Ogres each have 5 attacks that can get up to 6 or 7, depending on which buffs you have on it. Maybe even 8 with Skaven Brew. And then they'd be on 3s and 3s instead of 4s and 3s, -1, 2, which is nice, of course. And you could, let's see, yeah. Which is nice, of course, because then you've got all these separate units of Rat Ogres that are basically getting all at attack, just for giving up attacks on this one Brood Terror guy. I like this ability. I don't know if it convinces me to take him, especially if the normal Brood Terror also gets this 5+ ward. I think maybe then I'm actually thinking about taking a Brood Terror because of the -1 to hit rule. But this is really cool and clearly is something you'd want to use in a Molder-oriented build. What do you guys think about these War Scrolls, though? I'm really curious. I think this is a really great move for GW to be expanding the options because they're not. I know a lot of people are critical of GW for saying they sell you stuff. They make good rules for things they want to sell. I think that's a little. There's not enough proof for that. Obviously, from a corporate perspective, that makes sense. But even then, we've had a lot of new models in 4th edition come out with not that great rules. I'm thinking about like most of the Git Mob stuff, a good chunk of the new Ruination Chamber stuff in Stormcast. Not all the new Skaven stuff, including this Brood Terror, was good. There are plenty of examples of things that have come out that are new and that you'd think they'd want to push on off the shelves and push by having good rules, and that's not necessarily been the case. Plus, now that they're saying, hey, you can use your units in 2 different ways for this season, as long as you don't mix and match, and possibly for a discount in points. And you don't have to like buy another copy of the model because you're legally not allowed to bring extra ones anyway. I actually think that's pretty neat and against that story. For anyone that really feels like GW feels that way, that's fine. I'm not trying to argue with you, but I think this is a cool move on their behalf, at least in that sense. Okay. So let's take a look at the other things that are in this document, starting with the battle formation. So as per any other army right now, they've only got 4 battle formations, so now we're getting 50% more, which is kind of neat. So let's see. Envoys of the Deepenaw. Okay, I like that name. Okay, Will of the Horned Rat. So this is a passive ability for your whole army, I guess. While a friendly Skaven demon, so that's going to be your Vermin Lords. If I'm not mistaken, they're the only ones, plus Vizik. I don't know if people usually think of him as a Vermin Lord, but Vizik is, as far as I'm aware, a demon. Yep, but he's not officially. So it's your Vermin Lords, the 2 named ones, basically, Vizik and Screech, plus the 4 non-named ones. Okay? While a friendly Skaven demon is within the combat range of a friendly non-hero Skaven infantry unit. So this is going to be like your Clan Rats, your Plague Monks, your Night Runners, the Acolyte Globadiers, all of your weapons teams that are infantry, of course. Yeah, so we've got some options there. Your Storm Fiends, so forth. That Skaven demon has a ward of a 4+. So they all have a 5+ ward, so it's basically +1 ward. Each time you make a successful ward roll for that Skaven demon, inflict 1 mortal damage on a friendly non-hero Skaven infantry unit within that unit's combat range after the damage sequence for that unit has been resolved. So obviously they're using, we've seen this type of bodyguard effect where you're kind of sacrificing the guys around you in like the Legion of the First Prince and some other things too. But it's nice because it keeps those deceivers and whatever on a healthier profile. This makes me think that maybe taking Gutter Runners or Night Runners, I always get the 2 mixed up, but I'm pretty sure it's Night Runners, running around with a Screech actually, or not Screech, with a Deceiver, keeping him alive a little bit better because they're basically just chaff units that go take objectives and stuff. So maybe they go run around with him a little bit. Clan Rats aren't going to really keep up with him, especially with all the teleporting he likes to do. But I'm thinking about other builds, you know, the Warp Seer is a popular choice, and even keeping Screech in the list. I've been trying to see if there's a good reason to take Screech, and I'm hoping this would maybe push that over the edge a little bit. Of course, this is protecting Vizik even more. He's probably one of the main things, because if you're playing like Tom Guan's list with 180 Clan Rats and Vizik, where everyone has to attack Vizik, then this 4+ ward is pretty nice. Now it's each time you make a successful ward roll, not like a 1 or something like with, I believe that's how a Mortis Guard work. So every time he does use the effect, he's basically just letting one of the clan rats die or something. But considering D3 of them come back every turn and there's other ways to get them back, that doesn't seem like such a big loss. You could also technically, because of how this works with being in combat range or not, what you could do is only pull as many as you need for this ward. I suppose you say the guy's going to get attacked by 2 different units. You could strategically choose to start pulling models out of the units, the infantry unit that's protecting the demon, so the Vermin Lord, by pulling them away, either so that they stay in contact with him within 3 inches of like combat range, so that he can keep having the ward. Or if you feel like you're losing them too fast, pull them away so you've got at least 1 model left or something, say a clan rat, so they can keep respawning with their natural D3 come back at the end of the turn, and pull them outside of combat range and put him back to a 5+ ward for the next activation. So anyway, I like it. I don't think it's like going to change the meta or anything, but I think it's kind of flavorful and nice, and why not? It gives you a reason to maybe run more demons, which is cool. More Vermin Lords. Our other big battle formation is going to be Gathering of the Clans. With a once per turn army reaction, you declare the redeploy command for a friendly Skaven unit. And backstabbing allies, I guess, is the name of the ability. Pick up to 2 other friendly Skaven units that are not in combat and wholly within 13, the holy number of Skaven, of the unit using the redeploy command to be the targets. Each target must have at least one of the following keywords: Firmness, Scryer, Molder, Pestilence, Eshin. So that's going to eliminate anything that's only Master Clan, because there's 6 different things, and that's the only one that's listed. And the only things that only have Master Clan are going to be Thankful, the 2 Grayseer variants, so the one that's on foot and the one that's on the Screaming Bell. And not even... and then Vizek. Vizek is only Master Clan, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm taking a quick look. But it doesn't impact... I'm like, the rule will be usable by Screech, because Screech has all of the clans' names. Oh, and the Warpseer also. I forgot about the Warpseer. So those are the units that won't be able to use this ability. But basically, you're getting... Okay, let's finish the rule. After that redeploy command has been resolved from the original one, each of the targets can immediately use the redeploy command in order for in order of your choice without any command points being spent. This is actually amazing, because it's kind of like if you especially had 3 big blocks, your whole army is just moving together out of the way and not just leaving one thing stuck there. So, and remember, it's a pulse, not a bubble. So what happens at the moment of picking the one unit that's going to officially use redeploy, any 2 other units can use it that are wholly within 13 at that moment. So even if the unit that you move first is not necessarily the one that you would prioritize if you only had 1 redeploy, you can pick some weird unit in the middle just because it has a better bubble to go reach something else, and then let it first move, and then you get to choose in either order what you want to do with the other 2. Technically, of course, you could get stuck like trying to move around each other, and then you don't get as much movement. And then redeploy is only a d6 inches, and you're rolling separately for each one, so you don't know exactly how much their movement range they're going to get. But they could run in different directions, say. Like, a lot of times someone charges into your castle, and they're trying to tag all of your units so they can split their attacks and kill everything. If you send everything in totally different directions, then you end up getting... they're going to have to make a choice, maybe. Or you could get 3 that are to move out of shooting range. Say that something just teleported, and any amount of redeploy would save 3 units. That's pretty amazing. So I like this rule a lot. I think this one might actually see some play, especially in combo with 3 claw steps ahead. Because a lot of times you're doing 3 claw steps ahead. That's the moving one of your non-monster units with their normal move after the enemy's hero phase is completed. So when you get to do stuff in your part of their hero phase. And then you can combine that with this, that's in the hero phase, and then this in the movement phase, functionally moving 4 units, which is insane. And if you're combining it with a Warpseer's plus 2-inch move, the 2-inch move that we talked about, that was for 3 claw steps, and the 2-inch move we just talked about for the new version of the Screaming Bell, or let's say a Field Sergeant. So, and then you're also doing, say, Critic, Foul Blades. His 2 units for a CP can use 3 claw steps, and then you're doing this, you're getting all kinds of. It's like the whole army just scatters all over the place. I think this is super flavorful for Skaven and super neat. But what are you guys thinking? Let me know. And our last thing is going to be the heroic traits. So as you know, we currently have 3 heroic traits and 3 artifacts of power for most of the armies. Some armies have like 6, like Gargants I think have 6 things they can choose from because they just don't have that many options to customize in the army. But generally speaking, that's the case. But now we're seeing that we're getting 3 new heroic traits. Now it could be that every single army that's getting one of these faction expansions is getting heroic traits, battle formation, and 2 units. But it could be that they diverge from that formula, and this is just the first example we're seeing. So it could be artifacts. You might say, well, does it really matter which one? Well, yes, because it's still called a heroic trait, right? So that means you pick one of these instead of one of your heroic traits, but you still get the artifact. Let's say that you would have preferred that this was an artifact because you didn't like what your artifacts were, and then you could have kept, it functionally had 2 great heroic traits. That's not how it's going to work. So let's talk about the heroic traits you're going to be giving up first. So the most popular is probably Scurry Away, which on a 3-up allows you to retreat as if it were your movement phase. That's to save your hero, oftentimes a deceiver that's already teleported. You also had Short Tempered, which is adding +1 to run and charge rolls for friendly Skaven units holier than 13. And then you had Skilled Manipulator, which is a passive ability. While this unit is within the combat range of a friendly non-hero Skaven infantry unit, it gets the 4+, and then it's the same rule we've already seen, basically, as we saw with the demons above. So anyway, you would have to take one of these. You would have to implicitly not take one of the other ones. Of course, you're still only choosing one. How cool would it have been if this wasn't called a heroic trait, but like, I don't know, not a mount trait per se, but like a new name, and you could take 3 different things. That would be really fun because I actually like all these abilities. So let's start with the deployment phase ability, Devious Underling. Pick a friendly Skaven hero on the battlefield with a health characteristic that equals or exceeds this unit's health characteristic to be the target. So the biggest hero, it needs to equal or exceed this unit's health characteristic. So you're looking for a small one so that you have the most flexibility. So that would be any one of your small foot heroes with 5. If you put this on like a deceiver, then the only one he could really choose would be like the Screaming Bell, Plague Furnace type deal, and Thankful, and then probably Vizek. Let me check. Yeah, Vizek. There aren't that many options that have that much health. They're heroes. But anyway, for the rest of the battle, yeah, okay, so this is interesting because in that you're going to put this on a hero in your list. All right, let's start there. But then the deployment phase, so there's nothing that's, well, they'd be on the battlefield because you're going to use your deployment phase abilities, but they don't have to be within any particular range of each other to designate this. It's just they have to be a unit that's on the battlefield. So they couldn't be in Deep Strike. I guess that's maybe an important point. But I don't know how many Skaven players are really putting heroes in Deep Strike anyway. So for the rest of the battle, while the target, so the one that has the bigger health characteristic are the same, has not been slain, friendly Skaven infantry units have ward 6+ while they are wholly within 13 inches of this unit. Now this is a little confusing because we're talking about 2 different units here. The unit that has the heroic trait is the one that's issuing out the bubble of giving Skaven infantry a 6+ ward wholly within 13, as long as the other unit hasn't been slain. So basically what we just said about the Screaming Bell is amazing, because the old Screaming Bell had basically this exact same ability, but it was wholly within 6 inches, and now 13 is so much bigger. So you just need to make sure that the target you picked, your little underling, which is weird to me because you'd think an underling would be, yeah, the one that needs to not be slain. I don't know. I guess I don't get it, but like lore-wise, what's going on here? But anyway, say you picked a small hero, like a Grace here or something, and then you pick a big, like, Deceiver, and as long as that Deceiver stays alive, which is pretty hard to do for a lot of armies with all the tricks that it has, Skaven Infantry, are you getting a 6-up ward while they're wholly than 13? That's amazing. Like, that's a really cool buff. And then once the target has been slain, Add 2 to charge rolls for friendly Skaven infantry units while they are within 13. Now, maybe that's why it needs to be a bigger health characteristic, because they don't want you to get +2 to charge roll for, say, Storm Fiends or Rat Ogres or something. It's not going to work on Warp Grinders, or sorry, Doom Flayers, because they are not infantry. They are War Machine. But anyway, once it does, then you're getting +2 to charge rolls while they're wholly within 13. So you're giving up the ward for a more guaranteed charge. I like this ability a lot. I think there's a lot of tech. I think there's some cool stuff. I usually kind of poo-poo a 6+ ward on like death armies, but like Skaven could really use that, and it really makes clan rats even that harder to kill. So I think this is a cool one. Is it better than Scurry Away? Probably. I mean, depending on how you're using Scurry Away is great on a Deceiver, but in any other case, I'd probably take this one. Okay, we've got your hero phase Flesh Meddler. Pick a friendly Molder unit wholly within 13 of this unit to be the target. So the guy carrying it, the heroic trait, doesn't actually have to be Molder himself. Pick one of the target's weapons. Add 1 to the ring characteristic of that weapon for the rest of the turn. Okay, so the trick with that, though, is that you're not going to be doing that to the Hell Pit Abomination unless they change the wording on this, that it says it can impact a companion weapon. So once again, not impacting them. It would, of course, impact the Master Molder or the Brood Terror or the Rat Ogres, of course. And adding 1 to the melee weapons is nice. It would also work on Storm Fiends, by the way. So that's really cool, too. Storm Fiends might be the best choice for this. But and it would work on Lord Screech, because it's a friendly Molder unit. Which makes me think, actually, if I scroll back down to here, because we were talking about non-Scryer. Oh, yeah, we said that wouldn't work on Screech. Okay, cool. Anyway, so, I mean, that could be kind of fun to add +1 Rend to Lord Screech. Lord Screech has the best output of all of the what's it called? The Vermin Lords. And the fact that he could add his Rend yet again with his own once per game ability, or, you know, each one choosing a different, like, what am I trying to say, clan ability, he could actually be pushing himself up to Rend 4, which is pretty neat. Actually, yeah, I like that ability. If you want to send Screech in, it's kind of like a death machine, and maybe you combine that with this guy, and then like a Death Master and the Deceiver, and then you've got this run and charge, run and shoot wombo combo of a million Rend. That are doing actually some pretty serious damage, and that have ward saves here, really good ward saves. So that could be something. All right, and then last one is Pit Tinkerer. Effect, you can reroll the random characteristic rolls for the move characteristic of friendly Scryer War Machines while they are wholly within 13 of this unit. In addition, each time a friendly Scryer War Machine wholly within 18 of this unit uses Rolling Doom or Whirling Doom, add 1 to the amount of mortal damage inflicted. So, like any other rule that's referring to something, you kind of actually have to take stock of what qualifies for this ability. So let's start with what are the Scryer War Machines? You've got a Warp Lightning Cannon, but it doesn't have a random move, so it's not benefiting from the first part, and it doesn't have Rolling Doom or Whirling Doom, okay? So forget about that. Then you've also got the Warp Grinder, also a War Machine, and doesn't have any of that stuff that we just talked about. Also the Rattling Warp Blaster, same story. So what are we really talking about? We're talking about the Doom Wheel, and they're talking about Doom Flares. The Doom Wheel has 2d6 plus 7-inch move, which makes it a great take the flanks target. Of course, in the new GHB, when this takes hold, I guess, that's not going to be doable per se. I mean, it's doable, but there might not actually be that battle tactic anymore. I mean, but re-rolling that's really nice, especially on the Doom Flayers, who have 2d6 plus 3. They're basically going anywhere from 5 to 15, but on average 10. But because so much of their movement is tied up in the random part of that, whereas the Doom Wheel itself is still 2d6, but it's plus 7. So it's minimum 9, max, 19. And so, yeah, it's I think it's particularly good on a Doom Flayer's army. And it's going to be applicable to all of the war machines that are wholly within 13 of the unit carrying this at the time. So then you're thinking, well, who can carry this and also keep up with those fast units? And unfortunately, there aren't too many options and except the Vermin Lords. So you could have a Vermin Lord running around with them going crazy, and that's fun because they move 10. You could also have Screech, but oh no, not Screech because he can't take this. So one of the unnamed Vermin Lords. You could have probably the next best choice is going to be the new model, so we've actually got a place to use him. But the new hero for Verminous, that would be the Claw Lord on Gnawbeast. He's moving 9 inches, and he could take this. Now, is this a good enough ability to take that when you could be spending just the points to get a Vermin Lord that's running around doing it? I think I'd probably take the Vermin Lord still. But this could be really fun. And there's a version of reality where I really want to do a all Doomflayers list because I think there's something to that. And then guaranteeing that they get more reliable movement, or at least have a second chance to hit the amount that you want to hit if you have to re-roll it, is nice. And also that Whirling Doom or Rolling Doom is just their impact hits. So on the Doomflayers, it's just your normal per unit. You roll 1d3 and then do on a d3 2+ that amount of mortal damage. So then you're just adding 1 to the amount of mortal damage inflicted, if any, which means if you roll a 1 or 2, it doesn't do any. But if you roll anything else, it's doing 3 or 4 damage, which could be something. And then on the Doom Wheel, the Rolling Doom ability is the core move ability that lets it go through units. And then you pick up to 3 enemies that it rolled over and do the same thing we just talked about. But the fact that you can pick 3. So this makes the Doom Wheels kind of really go crazy if they get a chance to make that ability go off. So taking in like all Doom Wheel, all Doomflayers army is kind of cool. My worry is that these rules are just temporary. And so if you go all in on a list like that, just be careful because these rules aren't permanently in the battle tome for the rest of the edition per se. That doesn't mean they won't incorporate them, but I wouldn't rely on that. And that's going to be a constant story, a through line for everything we're talking about with these Scourge of Ghyran articles. So what do you guys think? We covered this in more detail because I'm more familiar with Skaven than a lot of other stuff. I don't know if I'll cover in so much detail with everything I do, but I do think this is really cool. Like, it inspires a lot of new list options. There's not a single thing on here that I dislike. Whether I think it's actually going to be meta or not is something else. But I think this is just a really positive step in the right direction and really kind of mixes things up in a way that might make every single army, if they've got something similar, open up new potential options and kind of become real interesting. Anyway, I hope you guys like this content. I'll be trying to do one every single day. Hopefully I'll get Jonas wrapped in on these two. I would have loved to have done this one with him too, but I just had so much enthusiasm, just wanted to get a video out, get back on some good Strategoi content. Thank you again to everyone that said hi at Worlds. It was amazing seeing you guys, and I can't wait to see everyone again. And let me know, what you're looking forward to out of these upcoming updates in the Scourge of Ghyran news articles. All right, until next time, guys, Ryan out.